Disturbing opening hook. I thought the house was empty, until I heard someone breathing in the walls. I used to tell myself there was nothing in the dark that wasn't there in the light. My dad used to say that to me when I was a kid, whenever I was too afraid to get out of bed at night to pee. Ain't nothing in the dark that ain't there when the lights are on, he'd say. And back then, I believed him, because he said it with that quiet conviction fathers have, like he was stating some sacred law of nature. But it isn't true. It's not true at all. I learned that the hard way. The only way, I guess. Because what's in the dark? Well, it's not always about what you can see. Sometimes it's about what you feel, what you remember, what you try to forget. And sometimes, the dark finds a way to wrap itself around those things like a noose. Tight, slow. I think it was always waiting for me. It started with a noise, not a scream or anything dramatic, just a soft, repeated click coming from behind the wall in my bedroom. I just moved back into my childhood home, the one my father left me after he died, and everything still smelled like old plaster and pine. The place hadn't changed much in the past 20 years. Same peeling wallpaper, same creaky floorboards, same faint scent of mildew that crept up from the cellar like something alive. I told myself it was the pipes, or mice. I didn't want to admit what it reminded me of, because I'd heard that sound before. It was the same sound I used to hear when I was 7, just before the scratching started, just before the thing in the walls whispered my name. But you don't say those things out loud when you're a grown man. You don't walk around telling people that your childhood bedroom might still be haunted. You don't even let yourself believe it. You bury it, deep, like a coffin, like a secret you'd rather die with. But the dark remembers. It always remembers. I moved back after the divorce. That's what started it. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I'd lost the house, the car, custody of my daughter. My ex said I was unraveling, and maybe I was. But grief will do that to you. So will guilt. And when you've got both gnawing at your ribs like rats in the walls, well, sometimes the only place left to run is backward. Back to where it all began. Back to where it first touched you. The night I moved in, I didn't sleep. I laid in my old twin bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to that clicking, like something was trying to remember the shape of the house, or maybe the shape of me. And then, just as I was about to drift off, I felt it. That pressure, like someone was sitting at the edge of the bed. I shot upright, heart pounding, but of course, there was nothing there. Just the pale moonlight filtering through the curtains. Just the soft hum of the wind in the chimney. Just the stillness, but not peace. Never that. The next morning, I found the door to the basement open. Now here's the thing. I never go down there. Not since I was 10. Not since the night I saw my father come up those steps barefoot, covered in dirt and whispering to himself like he was praying. He never explained what he was doing down there. Just told me never to go in. Ever. He boarded the door up the next day and pretended like it never happened. But now, the boards were gone, and the door stood wide open. That basement was a mouth, a yawning black throat that sucked all the light from the hallway. I stood there staring into it, and I swear to God, I felt it looking back at me. I closed the door and nailed it shut. Again, but by then, it had already started. The clicking grew louder every night. Faster, more urgent, and then it changed. It became a tapping, a slow, deliberate rhythm like fingernails against wood. I tried to ignore it. I started sleeping with the TV on, just like I used to when I was a kid, hoping the noise would drown it out. But it didn't help. The tapping wasn't in the walls anymore. It was inside the room. One night, around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. I live alone. The house is locked. I sat up, listening, every hair on my arm standing straight. The steps were slow, bare, deliberate. I could hear the boards creaking under each step, the way they always had when my dad would come check on me as a kid. Except this time, they stopped outside my door and stayed there for what felt like an hour. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared at the door, waiting for the knob to turn. But it never did. Eventually, the steps moved away, back toward the basement. That was the night I started drinking again. I told myself it was stress, that I was just unraveling, like my ex said. I blamed the house, the memories, the silence. But deep down I knew. I remembered, because something had followed me out of that basement when I was 10. And now that I was back, it wanted me to remember what I'd done. The slow burn into madness. The basement door opened by itself, and something whispered my name. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister, not my therapist, not even the bartender who kept refilling my glass without judgment every other night. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I think something I buried in my childhood basement is coming back to get me? Even in my most honest moments, I didn't have the words. Just a tightness in my chest, a slow rotting pit in my gut, and dreams I couldn't wake up from. That's when the smell started. It was faint at first, a sour, earthy rot, like wet leaves left too long in the sun. I thought maybe something had died under the house, a raccoon or a squirrel. But when I checked outside, there was nothing, not even flies. And the smell was inside, not out. It clung to the walls, to my clothes. It filled the spaces between the floorboards and whispered from the vents. I could taste it in the water when I brushed my teeth. It was like the house was sweating something dead, and I was the only one who noticed. One night, I found dirt under my fingernails. I hadn't been outside, hadn't touched the garden. I don't have a garden, but there it was, black soil caked under my nails like I'd been digging, like I'd clawed my way out of something. And that's when the dreams changed. I stopped dreaming about the hallway and the tapping. Now, I dreamed about a girl, pale, mud-slicked and blind. Her eyes were rotted out, sockets full of black water. She'd stand at the edge of my bed, whispering something I couldn't hear, mouth moving too fast, too desperate. The second I'd wake up, the room would be ice cold, my blankets soaked in sweat, and always that smell. Then one night, I didn't wake up in bed. I woke up outside, standing in the backyard barefoot. The grass was wet. My arms were covered in scratches. I had no memory of how I got there, no idea what time it was, but I was facing the house, and the basement door was open again. Not the one inside the house, the old storm doors outside, rusted metal things that hadn't been touched since the Clinton administration. They were wide open, yawning into the earth, and something was inside. I should have run, but I walked to the edge, barefoot, stupid, trembling, and I listened. At first, nothing, just the breeze. But then, from the depths, I heard breathing, slow, labored, wet, like something struggling to remember how to be alive. I slammed the door shut and ran inside, locked every bolt I could find, and sat with a kitchen knife until the sun came up. That morning, I found the cellar dirt under my bed, like something had come up while I was sleeping and watched me from the floor. That's when I remembered the first time I heard the tapping as a child. I was 6. It was winter. My mom had died 2 weeks earlier. My dad never spoke about her again after the funeral. Just buried himself in work and whiskey and the house. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. That rhythmic tap-tap-tap from the wall beside my headboard. At first, I thought it was mice, but then I heard whispers with it. A child's voice. My voice. Begging. And when I told my dad, he hit me. Hard. Told me to stop lying. Told me if I mentioned it again, I'd end up like her. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. But now, Now I think my mother saw it too, felt it. And my father, he didn't just board the basement. He sealed it. After he died, the will said never to disturb the foundation, never to dig, never to renovate, remodel, or remove the basement entry. I laughed when I read it, chalked it up to senility, but maybe he was trying to protect me from what he'd done, because that was never just a basement. It was a burial, not of a body, of something worse, something we'd invited in. I started researching old newspaper clippings, county records, property blueprints. The house was built in 1889, but before that, there was nothing. No homestead, no landowner, just a notation in the oldest county files. Lot C, unsanctified ground. Do not disturb. That was it. One line. Unsanctified. It didn't say why. Didn't say what had happened there. Just that warning. Like it was always meant to be left alone. And then I found the photo. It was in an old manila folder at the town archive. Labeled Murphy Farmstead 1911. Black and white, grainy, faded at the edges. It showed my house, or what used to be my house. A two-story farmhouse with a single tree in the yard. Hanging from the tree was a woman, head tilted, eyes bulging, mouth open in a scream that time couldn't quiet. But it was what was under her that chilled me. A child, standing, smiling, covered in dirt. That night, I slept in my truck. But it didn't help. Whatever this thing was, whatever had been biding its time beneath my floorboards, it was no longer content to wait. Because the next morning, there were footprints in the hallway. Small, bare, leading from the basement door to my daughter's photograph. The one I keep on the nightstand, and drawn in the dust beside it, was a name I hadn't heard in 20 years. A name I'd buried. A name that wasn't mine. The escalation and revelation. He was never stillborn. I buried the wrong twin. I stared at the name until the lines blurred. Jonah, written in a child's handwriting, scratched into the layer of dust so deliberately it might as well have been carved into stone. I hadn't heard that name out loud in decades. Not since the fire. Not since I buried every memory of what happened that summer. Jonah wasn't my brother. He wasn't a cousin or a neighbor. He was me. Or he was supposed to be. That's the part no one knows. When I was born, there were two of us, twins, but my mother only brought one baby home from the hospital. That's the story I grew up with. A tragedy too painful to explain. Stillborn, they whispered. Didn't even cry. But I remember holding someone's hand in the crib when I was 2. I remember crying one night because he was gone. I remember the voice in the dark that sounded just like mine. They said Jonah died, but I think something took him. And whatever it was, it didn't let go. My father never spoke his name. My mother only said it once. On the last night I saw her alive, she was standing at the top of the basement stairs, staring down like the darkness was whispering to her. "He's not gone," she said. And then she was. That's what the fire was. They called it an accident, said it started in the furnace. But there was no furnace down there. Not really. Just old stone dirt. And that smell. That same rotting stench that still clung to my throat every morning like a dead man's kiss. I went back to the basement door. I couldn't stop myself. The boards I'd nailed up were gone. Not broken, not pried off. Just gone. Like they'd never been there at all. The door was open, and the stairs leading down were slick with moisture, covered in patches of mold that pulsed faintly like bruises under the skin of the house. The smell was so thick now, I gagged. My eyes burned. But I went down. The steps groaned under me like they remembered. And at the bottom, the cellar was bigger than it should have been. Deeper, wider, like the earth had stretched itself open to welcome me home. There were carvings in the walls now, symbols I didn't understand, loops and crosses and jagged spirals etched into the stone, weeping a dark, syrupy resin. And at the center of the room, a hole, not dug, not built, grown. It pulsed gently, like something was breathing beneath it. And from that hole came a sound, a wet, slithering murmur, like voices too old to understand. And over them all, one voice rose clearer than the rest. Mine, it said. I remember. I dropped to my knees, my whole body trembling, my head filled with a pressure so intense I thought my skull would split open. Memories I'd buried came flooding back all at once. The games we played in the crib, the way Jonah used to hum to himself when the lights went out, the way he'd disappear for hours in the house, only to return with eyes too wide and fingernails black with dirt, the way he stood by the basement door and whispered to it, and the way he smiled when it whispered back. He was never stillborn. He was given, and I was the one they kept. I don't remember what happened next. Just flashes, blood, a scream that shook the walls, something crawling out of the hole, long fingers, teeth like broken glass, a mouth that opened the wrong way. It moved like smoke, like shadow, like everything and nothing at once. And in the center of it all, a face, mine, but not mine, older, twisted, perfectly symmetrical, like someone had tried to rebuild me from memory and gotten everything just slightly wrong. Jonah, he stepped forward, smiling that terrible, broken smile. And he said, "You took my life." I ran. I don't remember reaching the stairs. Don't remember clawing my way into the light. Just remember collapsing in the hallway, vomiting, shivering, sobbing like a child. And when I looked back, the basement door was gone, like it had never existed. Just a wall, solid, smooth, clean. I tried to leave the house, packed a bag, grabbed my keys, but the car wouldn't start. My phone showed no signal. The roads out of town were closed for repairs. And the neighbors, the few who still lived on this dead-end street, wouldn't meet my eyes. They knew. I think they always knew, because this wasn't just my house. This was his house. This whole time, I thought I'd come back because I had nowhere else to go. But the truth was, he called me, lured me here, not to punish me, but to replace me. Possession, collapse, and the final warning. I woke up speaking in his voice. He's almost finished with me. I haven't slept in 3 days. Not because I'm afraid, though I am. More afraid than I've ever been. But sleep isn't safe anymore. That's when he comes. Not in dreams, no. Those would be merciful. He comes when I almost drift off. When I'm on the edge of unconsciousness, clinging to that last flicker of light behind my eyelids. That's when I hear the breath. The same breath that once came from under the floorboards. The same breath I heard when I was a child pretending not to be scared. He's in the house now. Not the basement. Not the walls. Here, sometimes I catch glimpses in the corner of my eye. The reflection of a second shadow when I pass a mirror. A movement behind me when I turn off the lights. Once, I saw my own face looking back at me from the bathroom mirror, blinking out of sync with mine. I punched that mirror, shattered it. But the next day, it was whole again. Not even a crack. I tried to leave. Again, walked right out the front door, down the driveway, out to the edge of the road where the woods begin. But the trees, they didn't look right. They were too still, too symmetrical. Like someone had painted a forest from memory and gotten it wrong. And the road? It looped. I walked for hours, and I always ended up right back at my front porch. There is no way out. Every sound in this house is louder now. The groan of the walls, the ticking of the old grandfather clock, the slow scrape of something dragging its fingers across the ceiling at night. And sometimes, when I'm not looking, things move. Chairs, curtains, the doorknobs turning just slightly, like someone's checking to see if they're locked. And the photos. Every photo in this house has changed. My daughter's picture. Her eyes are missing now. Just 2 black smudges. My ex-wife's smile is twisted into a snarl. My father's portrait, the one that always hung in the hallway, now shows him standing in the basement doorway, holding the same rope he used to hang the tree swing when I was a kid. Only it's not a swing anymore. It's a noose. And beneath it, that smiling child, covered in dirt. Jonah. I tried burning the house down, soaked every room in gasoline, dropped a match in the center of the living room. It went out, not like it fizzled, like it was snuffed, swallowed. The smoke curled backward, like it was afraid, like even fire knew not to touch this place. I think it's feeding on me. Every fear I've ever had, every guilt, every lie I told myself to keep from facing what really happened. Because here's the truth, the one I've never said aloud. Jonah didn't die in the womb. He died because of me. We were 3 years old, playing in the yard. There was a well, old, covered in rotted wood, hidden under some ivy. Our parents told us to stay away from it. But kids are curious. We pulled the boards back. I remember his laughter, high and wild. He leaned too far, and I didn't stop him. I didn't call for help. I watched him fall, and I didn't tell anyone. Not for hours. By the time they found him, it was too late. But even then, I heard him, calling my name. From the bottom, whispering. They buried an empty casket, and I've been burying the truth ever since. But he didn't stay down there. He never did. Now he wants me to join him, to finish what began in the dark. And I can feel him inside me, shifting, filling in the cracks. My reflection doesn't smile when I do. My voice echoes wrong. My thoughts feel borrowed. Some nights, I wake up whispering in a voice that isn't mine. He's almost done with me. If you're hearing this, if by some chance this recording makes it out, if my words somehow crawl into the light, know this: the dark remembers. It knows your name. It knows your lies. And if you ever feel it watching you, from the corner of a quiet room, from the shadows under your bed, from the space between dreams, don't look, don't speak, and for the love of God, don't answer, because some things that go missing in the dark don't come back alone.